Hi everyone. In continuation to our last video where we have seen the concept of security list, route rules, and different type of gateways like internet gateways, service gateway, and NAT gateway. In this video, we are going to see the practical implementation of it. So in today's video, we are going to create a VCN, one public subnet, one private subnet. We will configure internet gateway, service gateway, NAT gateway, and we will configure the traffic between internet gateway to your compute inside the public subnet. We will try to see how to access that compute from my laptop to see the connectivity over the internet. We will try to see how I can connect it, how I can connect to a private subnet, and we will see how to access the internet from the private subnet. All this will be done with the help of security list and routing rules. So we will have to define certain kind of ingress rules and certain kind of egress rules. I will walk you through how to define it when we will go over the setup in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Console. So let's go to OCI console. The first thing we will do is create a VCN. So I'll name it as VCN lab. I'll give a CIDR block of 10.0.0.16. I'll click enter. I'll keep rest of the configuration as it is and click on create VCN. So my VCN is set. Now I will create two subnets in it, one public subnet and private subnet. So I'll name my public subnet as Bastion subnet. I'll keep it as regional instead of availability domain, that is AD specific. I'll give it a CIDR block of 10.0.0.28. And I'll give a default route table. I'll keep it as public subnet and a default security list. And I'll click on create subnet. So my public subnet is set up. Now I'll have to create a private subnet. So I will name it as app subnet, because all my applications will reside in this private subnet. I'll give a CIDR block of 10.0.0.16/28. It will give me an access to 16 IP addresses. I'll attach a default route table. I'll select a private subnet and I'll attach a default security list and click on create subnet. So my public subnet and private subnet is set. The next thing is I'll have to create internet gateway, NAT gateway, and service gateway. So let's go and create internet gateway. I'll name it as IGW and click on create internet gateway. Similarly, I'll scroll down NAT gateway. I'll click on create NAT gateway. I will name it as NGW. Remember, there are two options here: ephemeral public IP address and reserved public IP address. If you want Oracle to generate an IP address for you and keep it for the lifetime of this NGW, that is NAT gateway, choose ephemeral public address. If you want to control the IP address lifetime, go with the reserved public IP address. For now, for this demo purpose, I will go with the default configuration. I'll click on create NAT gateway and I'll go to service gateway, create service gateway. I'll name it as SGW. In the services, I will not restrict it to only object storage. I want to access all the services inside the network. So I'll click on all BOM services in Oracle Service Network and click create service gateway. So my internet gateway, service gateway, and NAT gateways are created now. The next thing is creating a security list. So I'll create a custom security list. I'll name it as security list for Bastion subnet, that is my public subnet. And I need to define the ingress rule. Now I need to allow the traffic coming from the internet to my public subnet. So I'll give a CIDR block of 0000 over the port 22. And I need to define a egress rule. Now, if you have seen the diagram, I need to allow the traffic or outbound traffic from my public subnet to private subnet. What I will do is, instead of restricting that traffic only till private subnet, I will allow the traffic to go out of public subnet all over the VCN. But if the requirement for you is to restrict only till private subnet, you give a CIDR block of private subnet. I am going to restrict this to go anywhere inside my VCN. So that's why I'm giving a destination CIDR block of the VCN that we created. And I'll give a port range of 22. Now remember in my introduction to security list and route table video, I told that there is an option to select what type of security list you need to configure. So there is an option to stateful and stateless. By default, your security list is created with stateful configuration. If you want to override that, you need to check this box to make it stateless. So I'll click on create security list. So my security list for public subnet is done. Let me create another security list for my private subnet. Security list for private subnet. Now the incoming traffic to my private subnet is coming from the public subnet. So I need to give the CIDR block of my public subnet here with the port 22. But my private subnet egress rule will try to connect to internet using NAT gateway and service gateway. So I will have to give two egress rules. First one is for the NAT gateway because it is communicating with the information over the internet. I have given the default CIDR block. And I'll give another egress rule for my service gateway. So for service gateway, I need to select destination type as service, all services inside the network, and create security list. Okay, I think I given 10 extra here. So my security list for private subnet is also created. Now I need to go to my subnets and attach these respective security list to private subnet and public subnet. So I'm going to subnet. I'll go to Bastion subnet. I'll click on add security list for Bastion subnet. And I'll remove the reference of a default security list from here. Remember that I'm not deleting the security list. I'm just removing the reference of it at the subnet level. I'll go back to VCN lab or I'll go back to subnet. I'll go to my app subnet, which is nothing but a private subnet. And I will add a private security list. I'll again remove the reference of the default security list from here. So my security lists are configured. Now the next step I have to do is create the routing rules. So I'll go to route table. I'll go to default route table. There is no rules configured here. So I'll add a rule for my internet gateway. And my destination block is 0000 with target internet gateway as IGW. Now, because I have made this change at the default route table and the default route table is automatically attached to my public subnet, I don't need to go and make any change in the configuration at this subnet level for public subnet. But I'll need to create another route table for my private subnet. So I'll create route table for private subnet. And I will add two rules in it. One for NAT gateway. And again, here the communication is over the internet. So I'll select a target NAT gateway and click on add rules. Similarly, another one is service gateway, all services, SGW, and add rules. So my routing rule or route table for private subnet is done. Now I need to go to subnet, app subnet, edit, and I'll replace default route table with the route table for private subnet. I'll click on save changes. Okay. Now the next thing we will do is we will create two compute instances. One that will reside in the public subnet, that is Bastion subnet, and one will reside on the private subnet, that is the app subnet. So for that, go to compute instances. I'll click on create instance. I'll name it as public compute. I'll go to networking and I'll see whether it is in the same VCN lab or VCN that we have created. I will ensure whether it is in the same public subnet, and then I'll paste the SSH key that I have with me. So I'll go to Notepad. I have already copied the key. I need to ensure that there are no spaces. Okay. And I'll click on create. So while this public compute gets configured, I'll go and create a private compute. That is a compute that will reside in the private subnet. So I'll name it as private compute. I need to ensure that it is residing in the private subnet. So I'll change the subnet. I'll paste the same SSH key that I have used and I'll click on create. Okay, let's go to instance details and see the status of the compute instances. Okay, so the public compute is done and the public IP is 144.24.114.32. Let's click on this. So what you need to do is now we need to ensure that because we have configured the internet gateway, we need to check whether I can communicate with this public IP from my laptop using the username OPC. So I'll copy this public IP address. I'll go to PuTTY. I'll create a configuration. I'll name it as public. I'll go to my SSH data. I'll give the username as OPC. I'll go to auth option, browse, my private key, and I'll go to session. I'll save this configuration. I'll accept the security alert and voila. So now I can connect from my laptop to this public subnet. Now the next thing I have to do is I need to see whether I can do an SSH to the private subnet IP. So I'll go to instances. Okay, my private compute is also configured. It is configured with IP 10.0.0.25. So let me do SSH 10.0.0.25. Okay, it is asking for certain password. That means some of the configuration is missing. So what I will do is I'll close this PuTTY. What you need to do is there is another utility that comes with PuTTY, that is run pageant. So you need to click on this. It will run in the background. Okay, for me it is already running. So I'll click on view keys. So what you need to do is, because I have already added my private key, it is appearing over here. But when you do it for the first time, there will be no SSH keys. So you need to click on add key and add your private key in it. This will keep running on in the background. I'll click on close. I'll go to my PuTTY session again. I'll load this configuration. I'll go to auth and I'll click on this allow agent forwarding. I'll click on open. Now you will see that there is a log that says authenticating with the public key from the agent. Okay, so now let's try to do SSH to that same private IP. Okay, now I'm able to establish the connection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run another command, curl -l, curl -l, and I will try to access a website. Okay, I'm able to establish the connection with a website. So what this is telling is I'm able to access the private subnet over the internet, and this is happening because of the configuration we have done for NAT gateway. So if I go to my diagram that I was showing at the beginning of the session, what we have done is we have created a VCN subnet, 3 gateways, and we have configured the connectivity over the internet for public subnet. That is why I was able to communicate with the instance or the compute that I configured in this private subnet. Similarly, I was able to do an SSH into private subnet, and from private subnet, I was able to communicate with a website. That is because of the NAT gateway configuration we have done, along with the security list and routing rules. So this was a quick overview on how to do a setup in OCI infrastructure for all the security requirements that you have. There will be different kind of configuration that you need to do depending on the kind of security requirement that you want to establish. But I hope this video was insightful, at least to begin with the setup. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. Thank you.